Hello, Raquel.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. Nice
Same
to
here.
have you. Thank you for your time. I would like to start with your bio because you invented yourself throughout your life several times new. And to give all the information, just tell us what's important for you about your journey.
I think newly inventing myself concerns mainly my professional life.
Yeah.
I was very lucky because I was one of those kids that don't have a dream what to become one day in life. I was always like, I don't know. There's too many things that I'm interested in, so I will not be able to concentrate just on one. And I was really lucky because mainly all the jobs that I did sort of flew in. I worked for a hotel that had the first computer system in Switzerland, and I did my internship there. And when I went back to school, this company sold lots of computers and did have nobody to teach people to work with them.
Yep.
So they called me and I became a computer instructor because I had worked with the system for half a year and no, even 2 years, and I knew it by heart, so I could be used immediately. So that was one of the things. And then later on, I became a TV producer because somebody thought I could do it and just brought me in. And then I worked for an opera production company that made operas in large-scale stadiums all over the world. That was also through a personal contact. They were looking for somebody who speaks Italian, and a friend of mine recommended me. And I worked for this company for a longer time, and just very interesting job working with soloists and traveling with the same company for quite some time. And then it got a little bit more boring because I had an agency for artists, like for birthdays or other events, and that was mainly a desk job, and that has not much to do with my energy level. So it was a bit boring, but then I think the biggest change in my life came when I saw the picture of this 3-year-old boy that died, drowned in the sea, trying to cross with his parents from Turkey to Lesvos in 2015. And I was so shocked by this picture and felt like I could not be outraged in front of a TV screen or behind my computer. I really felt that I needed to do something about it, and went to bed that night and then got up again and was really nervous about what I had seen. It really struck me a lot emotionally. And then I just blindly booked a ticket to Lesvos and decided I will go a month later to volunteer there. So that's how I came into this whole Syrian refugee crisis on the shores of Greece, and worked in not exactly sea rescue, but welcoming boat refugees that were coming to Lesvos. It was at a time when there would be 4,000 refugees arriving daily. Daily on the island, yes. And it was winter, so lots of kids with hypothermia problems, and it was really tough. And that's where I stayed, and it evolved from there. Maybe we speak about that later more intensively, where it went from there.
That's the whole topic of all.
But that's what the main topic of my life at the moment.
Yeah, these different stations, and what they all have in common. You succeeded in the new field. You reached goals, you had visions, and my interest is always, what do you personally think made you come so far? You have a trait that helps you, or you have an attitude towards life that would be in all fields adaptable and bring you forward?
I think one can say that I'm certainly definitely an optimist. Absolutely. That is, I think, a good key, especially if you work in a topic that is rather dramatic than light. Of course, that helps a lot to be able to see the positive side and to appreciate little steps and to not feeling like you have to change the whole world, but a little bit of it, but constantly and thoroughly. I think that's really important. And I also think it's really important to have a private basis that is satisfactory, to have good friends, a good family, good people that surround you and that support you also in what you do. Yeah. And for the actual situation, I think success is never a one-person achievement. It's always a teamwork. Yeah. And you cannot have a good idea if you don't have people joining into that idea and wanting to create with you together what you think could be done, then it doesn't work.
I read a statement lately that said it's a company sustaining startups, and one of the first rules was the team is more important than the vision. Because without a team nowadays, you are not able or capable or in the position to achieve anything.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah? Yeah. It's the point. And I think, how do you recruit your staff? How you achieve these people, or how you lead them? Because it's also a trait that you have to develop. Guiding other people is not something you can just have out of nowhere. You have to train it. And you are mainly women in your...
We are only women.
You are only...
We are only women, yes.
On purpose or just...
No, it comes from the fact that our actual work is actually we provide 2 safe spaces and day centers, one on the island of Lesvos and one in Athens, for particularly vulnerable women. And safe space means it's a place that excludes men. So men are not allowed to come to the center because the main problem that these women have, or the traumas that these women have, are originated by men. And they really need a place where they can be without being either threatened, because sometimes in the camps, obviously, it's very stressful for single women, especially. So it's really good when they have a place where they are completely free of having to look back on their shoulder and see, is there any fear or is there any danger? And so a lot of women basically relax better in those safe spaces and open up more also.
Yeah, men free means more security.
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
It's so sad, this whole picture shift.
Yeah,
it's really sad.
You were asking how we recruit the people. It's of course extremely important that the women we recruit are professionals, because we provide a professional psychosocial support. So it's professional social workers, psychologists, sociologists, and we obviously work also with translators, because the women speak different languages, and those are women from the communities that do have asylum, are allowed to work. They're officially, they have an official workplace with us and an official salary. We don't work with volunteer translation. We don't think that's fair. And of course, the professionals have a background with the migration context for at least 6 years, all of them.
So having this stressful and demanding position you have, how do you recharge?
Well, the position for me is not so emotionally stressful anymore because I'm in Switzerland. The biggest stress I could have is providing all the money to be able to do the work in Greece. But I'm in regular contact with our field director. She's been with us for over 6 years, so almost from the beginning, and that's a very, very nice collaboration. It's really a friendship, but also a really good collaboration on a professional level, and the hard job is done by psychologists or social workers who listen all day to really extremely sad stories and have to encourage very vulnerable women to move on in life and assist them.
So you have this sort of distance?
Yes.
Geographically and mentally by these professionals?
Yes.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's not to underestimate how much you're always in sort of a negative topic in your life, and it's nevertheless important to charge the batteries. I think I like to move a lot. I have a dog. It's really nice to go walking with the dog and just be in nature.
Nature.
Yes, swimming in summer and things like that. That's really recharging.
That's
for me.
where you recharge, out in nature. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
You also have this connection to art or beauty in general, where you can recharge a little bit. Nature is beautiful.
I'm free of talent for art, but I like art.
So you can get your profits out of it.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter.
I think I have a schooled taste because I was, as a kid, drawn very often to museums and so on. So I was really taught a lot about art, and I enjoy it, but I'm completely talent-free.
Yeah. Okay. Me too. No problem.
I think I may be good at making a fast, nice decoration. That's the creative part.
So, working in this field, and if you could change the world to a better one, what would be your utopia?
Oh, difficult. I think it sounds a bit stereotyped, but really peace. Really peace. I think even more important nowadays with what happened in Europe last year. I'm very much involved with, not with the direct impact of war, but like with the secondary impact. And that is already horrible. So not to imagine what it is when you're in a war zone, effectively. And I really think it destroys over generations.
Yes.
Not having peace. And therefore, I really think that the best utopia could be peace.
Peace.
Definitely, yes.
Talking of future and these women, you have usually some advice you could give us or give them?
I think the advice you could give to people who are not affected by this topic is to see refugees not as refugees with the stamp refugee on the front, but as people you just meet. Because the fact that they're refugees is just a part of their story, and there's a life before that. And we have many clients that say that they had, for instance, a happy childhood, but there was one day a huge impact that changed that, and they're seen ever after just as refugees and not so much as individuals anymore. And if we would meet for the first time today, since we both don't have that refugee stamp on our front, we're interested in each other and we talk to each other. And I think it gets lost when one of the persons has that refugee label. And I think that's really a pity. So the advice is meet people.
Human beings.
Whatever.
Fellows.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And all these combined with the stamp is these prejudices. You have ideas how refugees from a certain country might be.
Yes.
And that's also, I think that's also very sad, because they are fellow brothers, sisters, whatever.
And also, people from one nationality are not all the same.
Yeah.
We tend to think about one nationality in a very general way, but we wouldn't want to be seen in a Swiss stereotype as Swiss people.
No, it's not so nice.
And another thing that I think is a stereotype about refugees is that they're victims. And the way we experience our clients is you see that these people have an extreme resilience. Very often when you hear those stories, you think like, I would not have survived that. Impossible. But they do. So they're actually survivors more than victims.
Yeah. And then you change your attitude.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because then you have not a person in front of you that is helpless, but somebody that is really strong and maybe needs assistance in one matter. Like I would need assistance to make my tax declaration because I'm really bad at that. So it's maybe a bureaucratic thing, it's maybe a language thing, but it's not like that one helpless person that needs all the help in the world. That's also quite a colonial view of seeing assistance to a group of people or of working in an NGO.
And it goes denying their dignity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then you get into this pity, and pity is always wrong. You have to have compassion.
It's not constructive.
No. So let's go really into the topic of your organization, I say now. And I asked you, because when we met one day, you just mentioned for you just another argument. And it struck my head, and it didn't leave me for days, about this percentage of these women who were raped, assaulted, harassed, whatever. And it's, if I remember correctly, it was 94%.
Around, yeah.
It's just incredible. So could you give us just a short outlook on your association and about some facts, because facts struck. And I have these ideas, but tell us just concretely what's going on there, please.
So the 94% comes from single women fleeing.
Yeah.
Women that flee without the protection of a man or without the accompanying of a man.
But it's such a number.
Yes, and the problem is that gender-based violence is already an issue in the country of origin. Sometimes it's the reason why women flee, and then obviously in an armed conflict this increases, and then on flight even more. Because if you're a single woman and you're fleeing without any financial resources. That means on the way you could even be forced to sell your body in order to save yourself and get somewhere further or so on. So that's why this number is so high for single fleeing mothers. So we started in sea rescue or receiving refugees at the borders of Lesvos and the shores of Lesvos. And then there was like a crucial encounter on March 8th, the International Women's Day, 2016, we heard of a boat that had gone completely in a wrong direction due to strong winds, and went to a part of the coast where never before and after a boat arrived. And we went searching for that boat, and because it was in an area where there's no cell phone reception, we were not sure if they had survived or if they had drowned. So
Yep.
we were looking for 4 hours, and then suddenly in a garden, saw in a fisher, not even village, it's 5 houses there on a small beach, and saw a group of people there, and a young woman rushed out of the garden gate and came to the car and said, "Can you help us?" in perfect English. "Can you help us? We need to go to the camp." And this young woman is Ruha. She was at the time 23 years old, and she told me that she was with her 93-year-old grandmother. And I was completely shocked that someone that old had to flee war. I just, before, when you receive a boat, you just make sure everybody gets dry and warm really fast and then moves on. So you never make a special connection. Of course, you remember some faces and so on, but you never make a connection. And since it was 4,000 people a day for a long time, you don't have the time to make a connection. But in March 16, it went a bit down. So, and this boat was such a special case. So there was also more time to stay with these people, bring them to the paved road and wait for the bus from UNHCR to pick them up and bring them to the camp. So I talked with Ruha a little bit more and found out she was with 2 sisters and a cousin and this grandmother. And because they were all over 18, there is the European asylum law says you don't have a right to be with your family. You don't have a family reunification right if you're over 18.
You lose the right.
Yes, you lose the right. So if you're in Turkey and you have and you're under 18 and your father is in Sweden, then he can apply for having you come directly to Sweden a safe way. That's what happened to Ruha's mother because she was married and 2 younger siblings. But all the ones that were over 18 were not allowed to do that. So they tried, obviously, this perilous route to go to Lesvos and then try and make the Balkan route. And I realized that 4 beautiful young women and a grandmother would not make it over the Balkan route. The young women not safely and the grandma not at all. So I tried to deal with Ruha and say, you cannot do this, it's really dangerous. And then eventually it ended up by me living with them for 4 months because grandma could not be hosted anywhere with all the 4 granddaughters. So I just decided to rent a bigger apartment and live with them. And this situation was a complete eye-opener to the situation of women on the run, because I never thought about it. Obviously, it was this. I hadn't been in the topic only for half a year, and I was on these shores, and there were people coming, and they were all in need, and I didn't specifically pay attention to women, or of course you pay a bit more attention to kids because
it's normal.
Yes, because as a mother, obviously, also. You think if my child was in this situation, and but then I started really thinking about, but if it's so difficult for these 5 women in an apartment, what is the situation in the camp for women? And because Ruha spoke a lot of languages, I went with her to the camp regularly, and we started to speak with women to find out how their situation in the camp was. And that was actually terrible because there are fake protection zones. For instance, there was a zone for single fleeing women that was closed with a big fence and everything, but the sanitary facilities were outside. So if a woman with a towel comes out of that zone, it is clear for every aggressor that she has no protection.
Yeah.
And then the sanitary zones were mixed. Then queuing up at the asylum office, for instance, is mixed as well. So women stand for hours squeezed between two men, and in the most harmless case, they're just being pushed, and in other cases, they're maybe being touched. And of course, there were a lot of women from Afghanistan or Syria at the time who are not so used to be so close to men. It's not the same situation as it's another culture. Women mix more with women and men more with men, so they were not used. And we heard from women that they had, after 3 hours in such a queue, just given up, simply given up. And I cannot do this anymore. I feel so uncomfortable, that they gave up and then lost deadlines on their asylum case and things like that. And then it's generally, I mean, as you probably know, the camp on Lesvos, after the EU-Turkey deal, that was a deal that in March 16, also shortly after Ruha and her family arrived, Europe made a deal with Turkey that Turkey stops the boat from coming, but then is allowed to send a number of, I think, over 70,000 Syrians directly via flight routes, via safe routes to Europe. And the refugees that still arrived on the island were not allowed to leave the island anymore until they got a positive asylum or were declared vulnerable and could then go further to the mainland. So this population in this camp started to increase. And at one point, you have a camp with about 2,500 beds and sanitary facilities for about 1,800, and you had 21,000 people in a huge wild camp around it. And obviously, hygiene, big issue, food, big issue, criminality, big issue. It's never at night, it's never silent. There's always a fight or a child that cries. It's just a constant stress. And we realized that those living conditions and the hygiene conditions mainly are particularly bad for women. Because the female body is more vulnerable to bad hygiene than the male body, obviously. And we felt that most of the women said they just wanted a place to come down from that stress. And that was basically the reason we said, okay, then let's find a place where these women can come to. And they know that the moment they enter that door, they don't need to have all the antennas out and think, what could happen to me next? How do I have to move now not to put myself in a dangerous situation? To really come down and relax. And we've seen a lot of women that just came in, lay on the floor somewhere, even between playing children. Just the fact that it was safe, it was just as loud as in the camp, but they would sleep for 3 hours. Because there is this switch, I'm safe. And that makes you sleep finally when you're tired enough.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And so you started building up your organization.
Yes, I had actually registered the organization before that, but that was only like an administrational move because in January 16, the Greek government decided that you cannot be an independent volunteer on Lesvos anymore. And I was not comfortable enough with one particular organization to join them. So I was like, okay, the most reliable thing for me is to have my own organization and register with that one, then I know what I am doing and what I have to stand for and what I'm responsible of. So I didn't intend to make this thing bigger at all. There was no plan in doing what we have today at all. So it was just like, okay, let me get this stamp so I can legally continue to work here. And but then at the end of 2016, with all this experiences from living with Ruha's family, I had a board at the time of 4 women. We were like, okay, but if the situation of women is something special, why don't we focus on that? And started building that first safe space on Lesvos, and then realized within time that the women that were then allowed to go to the mainland had to start from the complete scratch. They're like taken out and dropped into ice cold water again because they don't speak the language. Of course, if you're on Lesvos and you don't know if they're going to send you back to Turkey, you're not going to learn Greek. You maybe learn a couple of words in English, but not Greek. So we felt like we should support them the way we support them on the island, especially the ones that are already members of the Bashira Centre, it's called on Lesvos. So we made a new centre in Athens, which is called Amina, and that's after grandmother, after Ruha's grandmother. And we were able to have the women that came to the mainland to go to a place where they already knew
the concept.
It's going to be somewhat the same. The house is different, the collaborators are different, but the system is obviously the same. So they know what to expect, they know what which support they get, and so on.
And where are you now? How big you became?
We're with those 2 houses. That's we just expanded a bit in our services. At the beginning, we were really a community center where any woman could come to and just relax or do some handcraft or just drink tea with a friend or so. And then we realized that the house was not big enough for all the women. So we said, okay, now we need to see who we focus on, and then obviously you start assisting the ones with the biggest problems. And then we became like a sort of a membership center. So the women are registered according to their vulnerability. There's also waiting lists, obviously. And then we started working with professionals that give professional psychosocial assistance. And when you're a Bashira member and you go to the mainland, you're automatically an Amina member. So it's really nice. Sometimes you have a woman knocking at the door and then coming in and putting her member card from Bashira down and say, I'm allowed to be here. So that's really nice how they also take their place in the new center.
And did you have a statistic of your organization, percentages of success or sustain or whatever?
The success is hardly measurable because the women have very individual problems. But we can, for instance, measure how many women that were homeless, because that happens a lot when they come from the mainland, because there's no housing support anymore. The Greek government has completely dropped a system that was housing especially vulnerable people. Although the European Commission is ready to still pay for it, the Greeks don't want it. They wouldn't even have to pay for it. Yes, no, not at all. It's a question of not wanting, yes. And then a lot of women got homeless. And of course, that's one success rate to say how many women we can get off the street and find housing with other NGOs or secured housing. Because the idea of the Greek government is to put them all back into camps in the mainland. And those are in very rural areas.
No
and
chance.
have again this camp stress that the women are thinking they got finally out of it when they leave the island, and then they don't, and that's very harmful. It's another re-traumatization, because it happens a lot, those re-traumatizations in that journey.
And the repetition is worse.
Yes.
You fall even more.
Of course, you're depowered instead of empowered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you give me a number? How many of these, not only women, but how many refugees, I say? Not. You said it's a difference between displaced persons or people and refugee. Refugee is a legal status.
Yes. Once a country grants you asylum, you're a refugee.
Yeah.
And you get the UNHCR passport that is together with your passport. You can, in Europe, you can move within Schengen with that passport, yes. Yeah. And the other ones we call displaced people, because they're not in
their place.
They're not in their place, exactly. And you can only leave the islands once you're either granted asylum, get the refugee status, or you're declared vulnerable in a way that you cannot be hosted in the camp on Lesvos anymore.
And these displaced people, what chance they have?
Many have no chance at all. We were talking about numbers. It's very varying. The Greek government has tried to empty the island of Lesvos because they built a closed camp. And the closed camp is a problem because it's not according to European law. The fact that I ask for asylum doesn't allow anybody to imprison me, obviously, because it's not a crime. It's something I'm allowed to do, to ask for asylum, obviously. So they wanted to clear out the actual camp where people can go in and out and take services from other organizations and us. And this closed camp is very rural, very far from the city, so they're trying to not have refugees in the presence of the local community anymore. Which is, I mean, in our belief, a total mistake, because the refugee community has also brought a lot of business to this island.
And input.
Input as well, yes, but if we're talking only on a monetary level, there is a lot. I mean, in the main market street of Mytilene, which is the capital of Lesvos, there is now an Intimissimi shop. So you can imagine this is not a company that goes somewhere where there's no money. So there is Frontex people, there is UNHCR people, there's Médecins Sans Frontières people, there is all other small organizations. They all need toothpaste and shampoo and go out and drink a beer or whatever. So it's economically it was really good for the city, but the picture of the refugees is supposed to go out of the city. Now this camp will most probably only be used for people who are rejected on a secondary, third, fourth, fifth level, because you can reapply, obviously, a number of times. And these people are really in a dramatic situation, because Greece declares Turkey as a safe third country, meaning any country that has a safe third country, another one in the neighborhood, can send those people back. Now, the problem is Greece and Turkey are not friends.
No.
And Turkey is not taking anybody back. So these people will be imprisoned in limbo forever and a day. You don't know where they can go. So I think the only way out for some of them is a repatriation to their country, which in some cases, obviously, if you left for not a dramatic reason or not because you're in danger, but because there was no more living grounds, obviously sometimes then people decide to do that, but it's rare. Most people are persecuted in their country, and if they would go back, they
End up in
face prison, they face murder, whatever. They don't survive even sometimes. So that camp will probably only host these people, and it will be like a little closed village.
So an outlook, what can we contribute?
So I'm quickly coming back on the numbers. In Greece has at the moment about 50,000 displaced people and refugees, so the islands and the mainland. And this is not a high number. If you think Greece has about 8-9 million like Switzerland. But most of these 50,000 people don't want to stay in Greece because obviously they're received in a hostile way. And we see at the moment a tendency for taking the refugees faster away from the islands and to the mainland. So they don't want this catastrophe of exploding camps on the islands anymore, because on Lesvos this camp burned when there were 14,000 people, and that was a big disaster. But they put them back into camps on the mainland.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yes.
Just displaced again.
Exactly. And again in a provisory situation where you're not encouraged to settle even, because if you're supposed to live in a rural camp, how can you start securing your own existence by making all the necessary papers to get a job, by even finding a job? If you have to travel 2 hours on a train to come into a urban setting where there is jobs or there might be jobs, then it's really hard to start even being on your own feet.
Yeah.
In our centers, we have about, each center, talking of numbers, has about 350 to 400 registered women, out of which we would say between 60 and 90 are active cases.
Yeah.
And we call it active cases, not according to the services they need, but according to the number of times they come. So if a woman comes 2 to 3 times a week, she's an active case.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't know if people are a passive case because we don't see them anymore, we don't hear them. And sometimes we understand that they have left the country. Sometimes they're just in a situation where they need to get reorganized and find their way, or a new place, or such, and then suddenly they come back. Or they're settled enough that some things are in their life are organized, and then they come back and say, now I'm ready to take Greek lessons.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, after Bashira and Amina, this is sort of the third leg of what we do, is trying to, we call it back on track.
Yep.
And it's basically vocational training in order to become, to get back on your own 2 feet and be able to find a job or finance your own family.
Yeah.
And that obviously starts with learning the local language and being able to communicate. And we offer prioritarily informal Greek lessons with a professional teacher, but it's not formal courses. It's informal. That means we start with one woman maybe from the level of literacy because she'd never gone to school. Happens sometimes with women from Afghanistan, of course, where the Taliban didn't allow them to go to school. And some women have a university degree and have a completely different pace, obviously, in learning a new language. So there's everything in between, and the teacher adapts to that, and also to different language groups. So we offer our services generally in Farsi or Dari, which is mainly the same, and in French, because there's a big community from West Africa, and in Arabic, of course.
Yeah. So I would say visit your website. There is all the information. Stay interested so we can contribute. We have the information and we do our portrait on our platform, and just hope people acknowledge what's going on. Because before I met you, I did not know all these numbers and the extent of despair. So we stay interested, we go on your website, and I thank you very much.
I thank you as well. And I would like to add that most people don't know that out of the over 100 million displaced people on the planet, 50% are women and girls.
Yeah, and girls, yeah.
Because the media is always feeding us with a picture of a male refugee, but half of them are women and girls.
Yeah, let's think about them. Thank you, Raquel.
Thanks a lot.